My great-great-great-grandpa started here, was a forest, and he logged everything with horses, and things have changed a lot since then. We have the next generation. I have our son Sean with us today. So when I started with my dad, he had 20-some cows and milked with buckets. Everything was done by hand. By the time he retired, he had 65 cows, and we had a transfer system and thought we had all the latest and greatest technology. And today we have 900 cows, and there's so much different with technology and how we take so much better care of our animals and our environment and people. So it's dramatically different and dramatically better for everybody. I wouldn't want to go back to the way it was done. So we're a family farm, and each cow is getting taken care of as an individual. They all wear a little earpiece that tells us their temperature and tells us if they're eating and how healthy they are, how much movement, kind of like a Fitbit for cows. So our family has to have more cows today than what we had many years ago, because all of the other expenses like land and insurance and feed and fuel and all those things are much more expensive. It would be impossible to make it with the same number of cows that my dad or the generations before us. So we're not having all of these animals just to be big. We have to have enough animals to be able to survive as a family dairy farm. I guess I would say that people have the perception that if they drive down a road and see a small pasture and see a few animals out there in the pasture roaming, that they're animals that are being taken better care of than animals on a larger dairy farm today. But that's not necessarily the case. Our animals are in a climate controlled building with sand to lay on. It's like laying on the beach. We have sprinklers and fans, and we go to great lengths to make sure our animals are extremely comfortable. So many people, if they would get out on a large farm or any farm today and take a tour, take a visit, and see how animals are being cared for, how crops are grown, how we take care of the environment, I think that perception that big is bad would change.
So the biggest part now is the whole cover crop scenario. So when we refer to cover crops, basically as soon as the fall harvest, say on a cornfield, is taken off, normally right after that there's normally rye or winter triticale. Those crops are normally put in right away so that there's always a green growing crop, so that it's absorbing the nutrients that's in the soil, and there isn't this spring runoff of soil and soil erosion come springtime or in the fall if there's a heavy spring rain. So that's doing a dramatically huge improvement to the soil health. It's allowing the earthworms to come up and feed, and it does a tremendous amount for the crops now, having a continual growing crop on it. Also then comes springtime, instead of all of that field tillage and preparation, moving the dirt, drying the dirt out, we're able to no-till crops right into that without having loose dirt, loose soil, and also preparing it for not having soil erosion.
This sustainability message is getting to be demanded or searched out by the non-farm people, and that's important. And it's also important for us to be able to talk about this. Our sustainability message in a dairy farm is an incredibly sustainable place, because we take the crops. Sean works hard at planning with a crop consultant to take soil samples and figure out how we can do the best job possible with our soil to grow these crops that we in turn feed to our cattle. Then those cattle produce milk and cheese and ice cream and butter and all of that yummy stuff, and beef. And then they also produce manure. And a lot of people think that that's evil, that manure is bad. But manure is actually a natural fertilizer. So we turn around and take that byproduct, that natural fertilizer, take it back out to the crops and put it on the soil exactly where it's needed, and it starts that circle all over again, growing the next year's crops to feed our cattle. So it's a non-ending circle of life, kind of, from crops to cattle to manure and back to crops again. I think there's a number of reasons why the non-farm public is caring more about where food comes from. One thing that caused a dramatic rise in that hunger to understand where food comes from is the pandemic that we've just gone through. People have seen store shelves empty and limits on certain kinds of food that you can purchase. So people are starting to be more conscious and aware of food and where it comes from. Obviously, we want to take care of animals. They're our livelihood. We want to take care of our environment, because if we didn't do a good job at that, how are we going to pass that on to the next generation? But part of the sustainability message also needs to be tied to people. So we want to take really good care of our people, not just our employees, our family members, but our consultants, and also there's always people driving by on the road and slowing down and taking pictures of our calves, so people are important. And that's also needs to be is a part of our culture here at Wagner Farms.